Good morning. I hope you guys don't overheat in the corner there. Thank you for inviting me to share the stories. So I've learned a fortune over my career, mainly from the mistakes that I've made. But I thought it would be most productive if I shared three main lessons that I've learned, and lessons that would apply to all three different lifestyle stages that we're covering today. And since I took the advice from the previous session on storytelling, I think it would be most interesting for me to share these lessons through a few anecdotes. But before I begin, I can look down there. There are a few disclaimers that I wanted to cover. So the first one is the anecdotes you're about to hear are from a point in time in the company history. People have left, and things have changed. So the stories may not reflect the current state of the business of the company. These are also my personal interpretations, so therefore they are completely objective. And I think most importantly, don't take this talk too seriously. All right, the first lesson is that change is a core competency. So my very first corporate job was as an accountant at Investec Bank. So Investec Bank is one of South Africa's and the UK's largest private banking and wealth management firms. And if you've ever seen an international rugby match, you'll probably recognize the zebra. You won't recognize that one. He doesn't know the rules, but you recognize that one. I'm not quite also sure why they chose a zebra for representing their brand, especially considering that their logo is a sight target from a rifle sight. But anyway, it's a little disturbing. All right, so Investec is known for their extremely creative financial products. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say creative financial products. Let's call them innovative financial products. They created a culture that really inspired the thousands of employees to constantly question the way things were done, not only within the company, but also in the financial sector in general. And one of the core tenets of the company was to embrace change. It was not just a bullet point on a employee onboarding deck. It was really something that they embarked on with their full energy. So they actively instigated it through making small changes on a daily basis. They moved departments around from one floor to another. They knocked down walls and moved them 3 feet to the left. They really changed many things all the time, so that when major change happened in the organization, like a new process or a new product, the employees were completely comfortable with the change, and because they were so accustomed to it. And so that's a lesson I've carried throughout my career, that not only is change important to keep companies growing, competing, but when change is implemented, it has to be actively managed. Because since dealing with change is really difficult for most people. Not you guys, other people, but it's really tough. So this is someone who really understood and knew how to drive change. And I was fortunate to be at the opening of the building when he gave his speech. Another really important lesson I learned at Investec, and since this is a room full of marketers, I guess it applies to you too, is that I'm not cut out to be an accountant. So, all right. Oh, that's big. It was much smaller on my laptop. We offered people who wanted to, in 1999, I launched my first startup, which was called SA Active. My co-founders and I were in our early 20s, as you can see, and we really didn't know what we were doing. But in the 90s, in the dot-com space, nobody knew what we were doing, so I guess that's made us experts. So we offered people who wanted to participate in sporting events a way to enter the event through the internet, which seems obvious, right? Because today, that's how everybody does it. But in the 90s, most people were terrified about putting their credit card numbers into the internet. And they were also on really, really slow dial-up modems. So it took as long to enter online than it did to fill out a paper entry form, write out a check, put it in the mail, and mail it. But it really was a need that people had, because South Africa holds some of the world's largest mass participation in sporting events. So we have the world's largest ultramarathon, and that's capped at 25,000 runners. We have an open water swim for a mile that has 16,000 swimmers. And it's not as chaotic as it looks because they let you off in waves. And we also have a timed cycle race of around 40,000 cyclists that circles the Cape Peninsula. It's a beautiful race, but chaotic when you start. So waiting for weeks for a confirmation that you've gotten into one of these races in the limited field is a little of a challenge when you have to book your flights and accommodation, and often there's not a non-refundable deposits. And so when I was describing this and thinking about it, it made me realize that, wow, sounds like we're solving a first world problem while living in the third world. But in actual fact, most of these organizations, most of these races are run by charitable organizations, Rotary, etc. And almost all the funds go, because the volunteers run them, almost all the funds go to charities. So with the cost savings we brought, with the efficiency, with the ability that we can now market to the participants of these huge races, much, much smaller races that happened every week. These races and race organizers were able to raise so much more charitable contributions than they otherwise would have. So that was quite fulfilling and a good motivator. And so the lessons that I learned at Investec of driving change and in actively managing change was a major contributor to the success of S-Active. And so when building out the team, we hired people who were really excited about the potential of the internet and how it could change people's lives. And they were not only risk takers, but they were also very comfortable with change themselves. And so the team was instrumental in inspiring event participants to enter more events themselves and to enter online. It was really helpful to race directors who were shifting from analog to digital, so paper-based race office management to everything online, and really helped them through this really scary transition and intimidating transition for them. But there were major issues. So because we were pushing the capacity of transaction processing, because we were shifting thousands of concurrent transactions through the payment gateways and credit card companies concurrently, there was some duplication of transactions, there were some delays. Race computers crashed. If you remember the days of the 90s, they would crash all the time. Microsoft would install updates. And there were many other problems. But the team at S-Active, the team of people were really, really helpful and really, really dedicated. And they were willing to completely redesign any processes when things didn't go as planned. Okay, so not all companies, however, thrive on change. So Netgear, a billion-dollar global company that sells networking products, acquired an IoT startup that I was with. We invented a mesh network of battery-powered cameras that streamed video from your home to the cloud. Now, you can see it had this super cool magnetic mount, and it was quite fun and easy to move around. But this is a concept now that everybody's very familiar with, right? We've seen drop cam and ring cameras all over the place. But 12 years ago, the idea of streaming video from your home, your private residence, to the cloud seemed like insanity. So the use cases to convince people to do so were challenging. But there were several things that appealed to Netgear about this business. It was in the new growing vertical of home automation. The product was really innovative and differentiated. And perhaps the most interesting thing to them is that we had a direct relationship with our customers because we had a SaaS solution that they used. They were one of the largest providers of equipment that connected people to the internet, yet they had no connection to their users. And since they sold mainly through channel partners, as soon as it was time for somebody to upgrade their router or their switch or anything else, they'd just walk into a store and whatever the salesperson told them to buy, they'd buy. There was no real brand loyalty. So the executives who bought the company were really excited, not only about launching into the new vertical, but about shifting the way the company interacted with their customers in order to build that brand loyalty. And so they helped me to come on board and drive that initiative. But the company culture was designed around repetitive processes. The business and employee base was optimized to design and manufacture product 305, load it out through channel, go home, play with the dog, sleep, come back, and roll out product 306. So rinse and repeat. It was really repeatable processes. And that's what made them successful. I'm not being critical at all. It's why they were successful in their very advanced technical field that they played. But they hired and they attracted people who were comfortable following a defined process. And for most of these employees, any change to their daily routine was extremely stressful. And the way in which this stress manifested itself was through claims that they just didn't have any bandwidth, which was really an amusing turn of phrase for people who work for a networking company. So the other thing that we were going through is that at the time I was there, Netgear had embarked on a global rebrand, which, as you guys know, impacted everything, right? Logos and packaging and product design and signage and channel. And we were also rebuilding our website, which meant rolling out a new website with thousands of products in multiple languages globally. So it was a lot of change all at once. And pushing too hard and expecting teams to perform the way I was used to startup teams performing really made me unpopular. I made myself unpopular. And with hindsight, I think I would have conducted myself differently. They actually ended up spinning this product out, Arlo, into a separate company that had its own IPO, and it's now one of the best-selling global home automation systems. But it wasn't really a great fit for Netgear. That's one of the reasons they ended up spinning it out. So in a successful public company that has multiple products generating strong sales, perhaps it's more prudent to iterate slowly. It's fine. Public companies need to be stable, and they need to meet their guidance. But the problem is that without alignment on how they can innovate and how they can grow, that stable company takes a risk of becoming a turnaround candidate. Okay, so turnarounds. 2 years ago, in the midst of the pandemic, I joined Zenfolio. Zenfolio is a SaaS business that has been providing websites and e-commerce solution to photographers for 2 decades. The company was a pioneer, and it really achieved tremendous success. And as a subscription business, it generated great cash flow. And so that made it really a great acquisition potential. But unfortunately, for several years, the company didn't invest in technology, which resulted in really frustrating experience for its customers, existing customers, and it opened the door to competition. And so a private equity firm, Centerlane Partners, saw the opportunity and bought the business. They also brought in a new management team to reinvent it. So Centerlane Partners invested tens of millions of dollars in the new technology and stabilizing the existing platform and building a new platform. And then when I came on board, there were several challenges. So customer sentiment was extremely negative because the old platform had been crashing. So you're running your business as a photographer on a website where you want to be sharing photos and making sales, and the platform's down all the time, it makes you look really bad for your clients. So tremendously negative sentiment and frustration. And because our customer support team was so amazing, we actually managed to save most of those customers. But it was a problem. And then the marketing team, who had been with the business, many of them had been with the business for many years, was struggling to sell subscriptions to new customers because of the negative sentiment from existing customers. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we just entered COVID. So the majority of these photographers were making their living shooting weddings and school and sports events, and all of those events had shut down. So we had to find ways to help them generate income from their past shoots just so that they could continue to earn a living. And unfortunately, some of them actually left photography, but some of them are coming back, which is the good news. All right, so the launch of the new platform was planned for 3 months after I joined. And what became very clear very quickly was that we needed to completely change the perception of the business in order to have any hope for a successful product launch. And so we decided to do a rebrand and rebuild the website and implement a multi-channel marketing strategy, all in a few months. So now after my Netgear story, you're probably thinking, I should have known better, right? But the difference was that Zenfolio, this was a make or break situation. You know, Netgear could have continued generating billions of dollars in sales if they hadn't rebranded or if they hadn't built a new website. They sold through channel, they continued as they always had. But if Zenfolio didn't recapture the imagination and the minds of their existing customers and appeal to a new generation of photographers, the company would have gone out of business. So many employees at Zenfolio were reluctant to rebrand when they were so focused on just getting a new product to market. It was a huge build. They were trying to meet feature parity with a product that had been in market for 18 years. And it just seemed like a distraction. All this marketing stuff seemed like a distraction. And so they didn't believe in the vision. And it was really, really difficult to get alignment amongst the marketing team. So it became apparent really, really quickly that we had to restructure the team. So employees who were comfortable with change and who were able to adapt to the new pace thrived. And they're still thriving. But unfortunately, as others were replaced. And as brutal as that sounds, it actually was the best thing for not only the business, but for those employees, because they could go find a new job in a company that was a better fit. So we didn't really have the luxury to face these tremendous challenges ahead with the team that we had. And so we really had to build the right team with the right culture and the right skills. So now we have a new brand, a new product in the market. We have really positive customer sentiment and great reviews. And in the last 8 months, we've acquired 2 companies, one that caters to all creative professionals, not just photographers, and we've integrated their marketing team into ours. And we also just rolled out a new AI solution from another acquisition we made that is the first in the industry. So very dynamic, very innovative, and really, really fast-paced. And this would not have been possible. Everything we've achieved in the last 18 months would not have been possible without this really dynamic team of people who can thrive on change. All right, the next lesson that I've learned that I'd like to share is that alignment is more important than agreement. So to illustrate this point, I'll share a few more startup stories. So at SA Active, we were at a really, really hot space at a crazy time. In fact, it was such a crazy time that we started the business with a .com business without even having a website. And the idea was enough to get a few contracts and then raise venture capital funding. But despite being in a hot space at the right time, believe it or not, we didn't get everything right. So being young and inexperienced meant that my 2 co-founders and I each thought we knew the best direction that the business should take. And looking back, any of our approaches would have worked well. Unfortunately, what we did is we spent so much time trying to prove our points and running initiatives just to prove their points and trying to get each other to buy into our respective strategies that we wasted a lot of time and effort and energy. If we just agreed on a single approach, any one of the 3 that we were debating, we probably would have been more productive. The one thing, however, that we were all in absolute agreement and alignment on was selling the business to a US-based Active.com a few years ago. And here's a bonus lesson that I learned. If you move really fast in a single direction, there's always opportunity to pivot if things don't turn out as expected. All right, so that was a lesson that I learned at a fintech startup I joined, we aimed to bring wealth management to everyone, regardless of net wealth. So what we did is we launched a direct-to-consumer play. So it was an investment management platform that provided personal finance and robo-investing to everyone. And our offering, although it was really differentiated, it was in a very, very crowded space. So we were trying to rise above the noise using mainly digital marketing, digital customer acquisition strategy, and that was really challenging. Because not only were we competing against exciting upstarts like Robinhood and Wealthfront, but also all the traditional banks, all the existing banks, were also trying to get into the digital robo-investing space. And then, of course, there were the traditional wealth managers who were only too happy to pay thousands of dollars in CPA because the lifetime value of that customer was so significant. So it became very, very difficult to build trust as well in a brand new brand that had people give us their personal financial information and ultimately give us their hard-earned cash. Really challenging to build a new brand as a startup. And so it became very clear, quite early on actually, that the go-to-market strategy was just unsustainable. So what we did is we pivoted to provide not wealth management, but financial financial wellness solutions to Fortune 1000 companies. So it was the same product, essentially, but we just pivoted our audience. And what this did is had many advantages. So first of all, the monthly user fee that we were charging each customer to use the platform was paid by the employer. And since our platform had been vetted and verified by the employer and recommended to the employees, it was much, much easier to overcome that trust barrier. And then the employers invited us into their offices, this was pre-COVID, to present financial seminars to their employees, and we covered that employer's 401k plan and ESP plan and the HR benefits that most of employees didn't know about, didn't understand, and were too intimidated to take advantage of. And that also allowed our financial advisors to have a really meaningful conversation with a large group of people at the same time, and also build trust, as well as demoing the product. So while this was a very, very different approach from the strategy upon which we raised funding, the leadership team, the board, and the employees were all in complete alignment. And so there were some minor tactical disagreements around some of the things we needed to do, but we were all aligned on the strategy. And this alignment quickly allowed us to completely change the structure of business to be B2B focused, which meant, as you know, new target personas, new collateral, and the establishment of a sales team and an account management team. And we had to do that really, really quickly. All right. Another example of a major change in strategy occurred when I was at a wearable device startup. And when I joined the startup, it was really just a science experiment. So a team of neuroscientists from Harvard and MIT and Stanford, and there was also a guy from Arizona State, created a neurostimulation device that you placed on your head, and then it connected to an app, and you could select either a calm or energy program that would calm you down in the same way alcohol does, or give you energy in the same way caffeine does. Kind of crazy, right? And we called these programs that you used Vibes. So the company was funded by Khosla Ventures, and when we launched, we received phenomenal interest. I don't know if any of you guys ever heard or saw this company, but we got a lot of press coverage, and we had some really great sales out of the gate. But once the device was in the hands of the public, that's when we really got some interesting feedback. So some users loved it, and they raved about us, changed their lives. For others, it didn't work at all, or it was inconsistent. But the craziest and most surprising feedback we got was from users who sent us letters and thank you letters and praise for curing their psoriasis. Right? That was crazy. We had no idea. So we were completely taken aback. And then we ran a few studies that actually demonstrated the effectiveness of a neurostimulation on dermatological diseases, which is crazy, right? And so the company pivoted to become a medical device company. So that was a shift, a major shift. But I think it was also much easier than at most companies to get alignment, as long as before your strategy sessions you made sure everybody had a chill vibe. All right. Next lesson that I learned is that it's really all about output, and probably more important than output is the impact. And it's not about activity. All right? And so we all try to focus on output, but not all tactics work that effectively. So when the sales team, it's a silly story, but when the sales team at SA Active reported to me on how many calls they had made, or how many appointments they'd scheduled, I kind of look at it and say, okay, great, but how many contracts did you sign? And so we decided to get a big fireman's bell, so that every time we closed the deal, the salesperson could come up and ring the bell. And that would be great for various reasons. It would kind of generate excitement amongst the sales team and motivate their colleagues, but also it would let the engineers and the customer support team be part of that excitement, feel part of the growing company, that the work that they were doing was meaningful and had impact. So one of our employees went out to buy a bell and returned several hours later, a little bit forlorn, because all he could find was this tiny little delicate bell. So I don't know if any of you, if you guys didn't grow up in the English colonies, you probably won't really know how important, the importance of tea time, or how it's announced. So every time the salesperson closed a deal and rang the bell, everybody in the office would stop working, get up, and go grab a cup of tea. So not exactly what we intended. We drank lots of tea that year. So at that time, we were really, really starved for comprehensive analytics or attribution, and for more ways to measure the impact of our actions. But over the last 20 years, marketers have gone from, gee, wouldn't it be nice to saying, what is the best off-the-shelf solution to solve that problem? And it's really great. We have so much. But even with all the data available, there are few marketing organizations, yours accepted, I'm sure, that have a robust practice of making data-driven decisions. Most marketers don't start out as accountants, and so they aren't tremendously enthusiastic of poring over historic data and metrics. So one of the most effective ways that I have learned about getting marketers to focus on their impact daily, or on weekly or monthly metrics even, is to hold monthly review meetings, where each member of the team takes only 3 or 4 minutes to share visuals of their creative output. It can be a blog post, it can be an ad, regardless, a landing page, and also to highlight the impact that this creative had, or this effort had, on the previous month's metrics. So the expectation is that the team members don't spend more than 10 or 15 minutes preparing for this monthly review, and no fancy PowerPoints are allowed. What they really have to do is they just have to walk us through the live dashboard of the metrics that they monitor on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And what that does, it took a couple tries. It may take a couple tries to get this. But ultimately, the monthly review tends to focus the team. So new members come in and they see this culture of reporting on metrics and measuring everything they do. And people who hadn't yet had dashboards, weren't looking at dashboards weekly or monthly, very quickly create one. Work with the analytics team, marketing operations, to build out a dashboard that's meaningful, and then look at it. Because they know they're going to be standing in front of the entire marketing team, and sometimes the product team and CEO, and presenting the impact of their activity, essentially justifying what they've done every month. Now, not everything is successful. Not everything has an impact, and that's okay, because we learn from that. It didn't work. Why didn't it work? What are we going to do differently next time? But it really focuses us on iterating and testing and measuring, which is really great. And then once everybody can show that they're having an impact, then we can all break for a cup of tea. Okay, so just a summary. These are the lessons I learned. Change is a core competency. Alignment is more important than agreement. And it's about time. It's about output more than impact. So thank you. I think I may have finished with a little bit of time, and I was hoping if there aren't questions, at least maybe other people could share some of the similar experiences they've had. I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, that was great, Jason. Grant Johnson with Imburse. Share a few insights this afternoon with y'all. I love this change. I've 4-time CMO. I've had a process where I recognize, reward behaviors that I think impact results, as you've talked about, and one of them is called adapting to change. It's peer program, but I found it's really difficult to get those who are not open to change to readily admit it. You often have to performance manage them out, right? So I'm just curious if you have any insights of how, knowing how important it is, how you've dealt with that.
So I think one of the areas that has helped is collaboration. So we're the teams that I've worked with tend to be very, very collaborative. And as long as the majority of people tend to be comfortable with change and we're all collaborating, those employees either eventually become comfortable or go with the flow, even if they aren't that comfortable. But unfortunately, sometimes there are people who are just resistant to change. CEO once told me that it's never too soon to fire somebody, which I thought was really brutal. But I think I actually took that because I responded so viscerally to that comment. I've responded the opposite. As I sometimes think I'm too careful. I give people too much time. There was one employee specifically in our team that I took 6 months to get them to decide to move on. I knew after the first week. And so trying to get people to change when they're not really the type of people to change can be painful and hurtful. And those 6 months were not very pleasant for either of us. And so sometimes it's better to just rip the Band-Aid off. But then again, I've been surprised at some people who I thought were completely resistant and have ended up being phenomenal drivers, especially because they come with so much historic knowledge. And so there's a balance, and it's hard, and it's employee by employee.
Hi, Dana with Crawford Group. I was actually curious about your turnaround with Zenfolio, and 3 months is an incredibly short period of time to do a rebrand. And having been through rebranding at Cisco as well as NetApp several times, and then with our acquisitions, how did you resource that? Because you talked about acquiring teams later as part of the ongoing process, but how do you do a rebrand in 3 months with your existing resources?
So I used outsourced agencies and contractors because the team that I inherited, I was still learning about them, and they were so busy doing so much. They didn't have time for anything, and so many meetings. And so I said, all right, you guys keep doing what you're doing. This is important. Do we all agree that it's important? Yes, we all agree it's important. The distraction, but yes. All right, so don't worry. You keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to outsource it. We're going to do this as a separate initiative. And I'm fortunate enough to have done this previously, launching brands for brand new startups, launching companies. I just kind of went to the team that I'd used in the past, and we kind of all came along. You may have noticed some similarities in some of the design aesthetics in some of the different companies. So that was really how it helped make this happen, because it was almost a separate initiative. Because I got them out of Cape Town, South Africa, they were less expensive, and CEO was okay with it.
With using kind of the outsourced agency and running that as a separate initiative, how do you get the existing team on board and excited about those efforts?
Again, collaboration. So we got to a phase where we kind of got into the second iteration of the logo, the positioning, the messaging, and then we had workshops. And we got people who were existing full-time employees. Well, the way we did is I worked with them individually, got them to own the idea, maybe even come up with an idea. And then when we were in a larger setting, they were supportive of the first pass. They could iterate to the second pass. They could iterate, which became the third and fourth iteration. So they had skin in the game. Not right from the beginning. They didn't have to start with a white slate, a white piece of paper, but they had skin in the game. But we talk about the 3 months. The other thing I did, if there was ever to be a Harvard business case study on what we did at Zenfolio, it would be how not to do a rebrand and how not to roll out a rebrand. Because we did it in pieces. We launched the new product as a separate site because we had to continue selling the old product because that was generating the income which paid for all the activity that we were doing. And then we rolled it out, and then we rolled it out in the US. And we sold the new product and the old product concurrently, which was a disaster. Never do that. And then we rolled it out internationally several months later. So there was a period of time where I had old logos and old messaging and old positioning in different languages and different sites. And I used to wake up in a cold sweat. But it was the only practical way to do it. Had they hired me a year later, it would have been a much better rollout.
I don't think there is a rebranding light switch that happens.
Yeah.
At least I haven't found one.
No.
Good luck on that, sister.
Great.
Aaron from Synchrony, thank you so much. Curious to hear what tactics you've deployed to maintain alignment once you have it. You talked about pivoting, but how do you keep?
If you're successful on the pivot, it's super easy, right? Everybody, we're geniuses, we got this right, and it's super easy. When you start hitting roadblocks, it's tough. Again, collaboration. Making sure that everybody feels on board, not only within the marketing team, but certainly between product and marketing. Making sure there's no tension between product and marketing, because that's traditionally, there's a lot of tension there anyway. You guys built the wrong product. You sent us the wrong people. Got to get past that. Because if there's collaboration and alignment within marketing and within product, the rest of the company comes along. Sales team, everybody else. what really was challenging with Zenfolio is we built this great team, we launched this new platform, the new product, and then we went and acquired Format, which was a company just a little bit smaller than we were, focusing on creative professionals. And then we had to bring their entire team into ours and restructure the marketing team again 8 months later after it was running so efficiently. So that was challenging. It had some teething issues. There were lots of cultural differences. I completely underestimated the cultural difference between Canadians company and US. You guys all have the same accent. It seemed the same to me. So that was very interesting. And we had some crazy stories. Like the CEO at the very first talk said, "This is our new platform. We're really excited because we've built a bigger mousetrap, a better mousetrap." And none of the Canadian employees understood what that word, or what that phrase, better mousetrap meant, right? We built a better product, people will come. And they thought that we were like treating the customers like mice, like rats, and we didn't care about our customers. So one turn of phrase almost derailed the entire acquisition. So understanding the cultural differences, collaboration again, and making sure you have the right people in the right roles is important. That's it. I think I've taken more than my time. Thank you very much.